Let's transition and let's go to the NFC South. Let's talk about the NFC South and my expectations for the NFC South this season. Obviously, last year, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they won the division with an 8-9 record. This was one of the worst divisions in the NFL last year. The Buccaneers won the division 8-9. The Panthers were 7-10. The Saints were 7-10, and the Falcons were also 7-10. And the NFC South, they play the AFC South and the NFC North this year. So, when it comes to the NFC South, let's start off with the New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints, they brought in new quarterback Derek Carr. Derek Carr last year had 24 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, 3,522 passing yards, completing 61% of his passes. And I believe that Derek Carr is an upgrade compared to what the Saints had last year at quarterback. They were inconsistent at quarterback, and Andy Dalton had a few games where he started, and I just felt like the Saints couldn't get competent quarterback play last year, and that's the reason why they settled for 7-10. I think when you look at this roster, the New Orleans Saints have a great roster. At running back, you got Alvin Kamara. At receiver, you're going to get back Michael Thomas. You still got Chris Olave as well. At tight end, you got Juwan Johnson. Okay. Defensively, you still got Cameron Jordan. You still got DeMario Davis at linebacker. In your secondary, you still got Marshawn Lattimore as well. Honey Badger at safety. So I believe that this Saints roster is one of the best rosters in the NFL. They just need some competent quarterback play. Notice I said competent, not even necessarily elite. Derek Carr doesn't have to be Patrick Mahomes. He doesn't have to be Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen or Joe Burrow. He just has to be competent and good, because I feel like the rest of this roster is good enough to have the Saints win football games this year. The Saints have the easiest schedule this season. They're only underdogs in 3 of their games this year. They're out of their 17 games, they're only underdogs in 3 of those 17 games. So Vegas has the Saints having a big year for sure. Like I said, I think that they are sleepers, and I think they're a team that you have to look out for in the NFC, because in the NFC, it's not a lot of teams that are elite teams. I look at the 49ers and the Eagles and the Cowboys as being the elite teams in the NFC. But after that, I believe the Saints are teams that are in the next tier after the 49ers, Eagles, and Cowboys. So you got to look out for the Saints this year. You really, really got to look out for the Saints. And the other team in the NFC South that a lot of people got high expectations for, me not so much, is the Atlanta Falcons. They got the second easiest schedule. They are coached by Arthur Smith. And Arthur Smith, since he's been in Atlanta, he's won 41% of his games. And Desmond Ridder is going to get an opportunity to start this year for the Atlanta Falcons. They got Bijan Robinson in the backfield, and they got Kyle Pitts as their tight end. Remember, Kyle Pitts was a top draft pick last year coming out of the NFL draft, so I got high expectations for him, and I love his talent. I think Kyle Pitts is arguably one of the best young tight ends that we have in the NFL. I really, really feel that way. Now, offensively, when you look at the Atlanta Falcons, again, Ridder at quarterback, Robinson in the backfield, but I'm not really a big believer in their receivers. Mac Hollins, Drake London, give me a break. I don't even know who these guys are. So I'm not really a big believer in their receiving core. So how effective can you expect Desmond Ridder to be if he doesn't have a reliable receiving core? I don't know. That's a question that Arthur Smith is going to have to answer. But a lot of people got high expectations for their running back room. Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier in their running back room. People got high expectations for the Falcons and their ability to be able to run the football. And if you can run the football, you can take some pressure off of Desmond Ridder to not have to perform at a high level. Defensively, they got Calais Campbell. who they signed, who they have as well. They got Jesse Bates, who they signed in free agency from the Bengals. So people feel like the Falcons are one of those teams in the NFC South who could be a playoff team. I don't, but I do believe that Desmond Ridder, if he can hand the football off to Robinson and they can control the clock and play some great defense, maybe the Falcons can surprise some teams. But I don't expect them to be a team that's going to be competing for a playoff spot in the NFC. Let's transition to the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers, obviously they drafted Bryce Young. They also have new head coach Frank Wright. Now, Frank Wright, his coaching record is 40-33-1. So he's been a decent coach. He was coaching at Indianapolis with the Colts. He wasn't great, but he was okay. But Bryce Young, who is his new rookie starting quarterback, 80 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 8,356 passing yards, completing 66% of his passes. He won a Heisman Trophy in 2021. I like Bryce Young and his upside, but I just don't know if they're going to be able to protect him. They did bring in Miles Sanders to add to that running back room. They signed Adam Thielen as well, the former Vikings receiver. But I don't have high expectations for the Panthers offensively because I don't know if they're going to be able to protect Bryce Young. I don't. I got my questions about that offensive line. I really, really do. Now, when you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're going to bring back Mike Evans offensively and Chris Godwin. But the biggest issue last year with the Buccaneers, they weren't able to run the football. I mean, they were pathetic running the football last year, and they did bring in Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield played well last year for the Rams in those few starts that he had. Baker Mayfield last year had 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He played in that one matchup when the Rams were going up against the Raiders, I believe. I think it was the Raiders. In that primetime game where he threw that game-winning touchdown pass. So Baker Mayfield is going to be the starter for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But I'm not sure how long he's going to be the starter. Maybe Kyle Trask at some point gets an opportunity to play because Baker Mayfield is inconsistent. He's inconsistent. And the Buccaneers last year, they couldn't run the football. They got a lot of offensive line issues. I just don't know about their offensive line. They got Robert Hazley. They got Matt Fielder, Tristan Wirfs up front, but Tristan Wirfs is transitioning to left tackle. Last year, he was the right tackle for the Buccaneers. Okay? They drafted Cody Mock. I don't know about this offensive line for the Buccaneers. And I think in order for them to be successful, they got to run the football with Rachaad White and Chase Edmonds. I don't know if they're going to be able to do it. Last year, they shouldn't even make the playoffs, honestly. The Buccaneers got into the postseason with an 8-9 record. 8-9 record. They shouldn't even been a playoff team. But they were a playoff team because they won the division, but their division was terrible last year. It was terrible. Ryan Jensen is on IR as well. And I like Ryan Jensen as an offensive lineman, but he's on IR already to start the season. So I just don't know about the Buccaneers. I really, really don't. I got my questions about Todd Bowles as well. So everything considered, I feel like the New Orleans Saints are the favorites to win the NFC South. And I don't have neither the Falcons, Panthers, or Buccaneers as playoff teams in the NFC. I think the Saints will dominate the division, and I think they're going to run away with the division and win the NFC South this year. So I just don't got belief in the Panthers, Bucks, or Falcons yet. Now, maybe the Falcons surprise me because that's the team that everyone's talking about in the NFC South who can surprise some people and surprise some teams. But but the Buccaneers got Baker Mayfield. Their offensive line, they got a lot of questions at O-line. The Panthers got Bryce Young. I love Bryce Young. I think he's going to have a tremendous career, but they don't have anyone who can protect him. They don't got nobody who can protect them. And then for the Falcons, they got Desmond Ridder, but I don't believe in their receiving core. I got questions about their skill position players, and if you don't have players who you can rely on for Desmond Ridder to throw the football to, how can he be effective? So I think in the NFC South, it is the Saints division to lose. And I think they will be representing the NFC South in this year's playoffs.